Hey, good night. How you guys doing today? Brian O'Shea will not be here for about 10 minutes as he's finishing up another podcast that he's on, Spouting the Truth, and then we will bring him back on here in about 10 minutes. But welcome to Mostly Peaceful, Unrestricted. We had a great show for you tonight. And I'm going to jump right in because we need to talk about what's happening in America as far as illegal immigration, open borders, and terrorism. Something very unique is happening, and it is the changing. I don't know if it's unique, but it's telling, I would say, because the narrative is changing. And when the narrative changes, you have to sit up and pause for a second and ask yourself, why? Why are they doing this? And one of the ways that they're changing the narrative is for months and months, people like myself have been saying, hey, the border's wide open. Special interest aliens / terrorists are pouring into the nation. And then the onslaught of, oh, you just want terrorism in our country to show that you're right and that your views are correct. And all I'm stating, people like myself have been stating, wait a minute, these are DHS, Department of Homeland Security, are pushing out numbers through Customs and Border Protection, which is Border Patrol and ICE, saying that there are millions of people that have come into our nation. And of those millions that we know about, not the ones that absconded, they believe DHS is claiming 2 to 3 million, but just the ones that we've arrested, there's over 100 to 105,000 in the last 2 years of special interest aliens, which are terrorists. We being the Border Patrol, has arrested and then released. SIAs are terrorists. So, and on some level, you can argue, or DHS will argue, well, I really don't know what level of terrorism there are. Is he high level like some of the people they're arresting my old station this last month, or are they just messengers or low level? Who really cares? A terrorist is a terrorist. So we're seeing this narrative that now has shifted from people like myself, oh, you guys are conspiracy theorists. Now we're seeing DHS stated openly, Christopher Wray stated open, Mayorkas. We're seeing the media heads are all talking on mainstream media, and they've acknowledged now and basically been forced to relent you guys conspiracy theorists to, yes, there are terrorists in our nation. That's a big deal. Now they're saying, yes, there's terrorists in our nation. Now the argument has shifted from terrorists or no terrorists to how many. And that should scare the hell out of every American. We have a DHS that is now openly stated. We have 2 to 3 million people have come across the border undetected. We being CBP, I keep saying we because I was Border Patrol for so long and now I'm removed, but they're still part of my blood. But CBP is stating we've arrested 8 million people. And of those 8 million people, millions upon millions, probably 90+% have been released. They have no idea what's going on. I'm going to show you a couple of videos from this last week, at the end of last week, when Christopher Wray, the director of FBI, and Secretary Mayorkas from DHS were grilled, and they both just stonewalled. Wray, not as much. Ray's arrogant, and he just kind of like, the senators are nothing to him. They're just problems. Mayorkas is just a little troll. He looks like a troll, and he is a troll, but he cares a little more than Wray. He's less arrogant, but he's on the high end on the arrogant scale. But ultimately, Mayorkas doesn't care either. He's going to do what he wants to do. That man is extremely successful at destroying the American immigration system. But we're seeing now videos from people, and I'll give them credit because Ben Bergquam from Real America's Voice, as well as Oscar, I forget his last name, is on Real America's Voice, and they keep pushing out videos almost daily of the people that are being arrested on the border. Now we're seeing images or videos of a lot of Muslim men praying 5 times a day to Mecca on the border. On the border. Look at what happened in Washington, D.C. this past weekend. Over 100,000+ people stormed Washington, D.C., vandalized numerous statues that are very important to us in America, represent our past and our history and where we're going in the future. Desecrated it through blood, or representative blood is red paint all over the fence outside the White House. One person was arrested. Secret Service did a daily report and said nothing happened out of the ordinary. America, we're being lied to constantly. We are being manipulated through media and the narrative. It's all a lie. I'm just going to show you a couple of videos, just 2 videos. I'm going to go share my screen, and I want you to see this. So here's the first video from Senator Johnson from Wisconsin talking to Mayorkas. You see that? You see what he said? Ron Johnson just laid it out. How many people? And he sits there and says, I don't know. How in the hell do you not know? You're the Secretary of DHS. I can go right now on cbp.gov and tell you exactly what the numbers were last month and how they're trending now. I know because I had the same tools as Mayorkas. Obviously, Mayorkas has enormous amounts of tools where he can get online or call somebody directly and say, I want to know exactly right now how many people have crossed and how many we let go. He's obviously knows all those answers, but he won't. And you have to ask yourself, why won't he answer these questions that has already been out there, right? It's not like these numbers are hidden. They have to post them every month. And Senator Johnson's absolutely correct. You've let in over 6 million people, which I believe that number is grossly conservative. But let's just follow that, meaning you have arrested 8 million. You've released over 6 to 7 million. And Ron Johnson says, well, how many getaways do you have? Well, I don't know. Well, how do you not know? You're claiming 1.7 to 2 million. We know that number should be closer to 6, 7, 10 million this last year. And then if you really want to dial in, which I did with Mayorkas, and this is going, you have to listen to what these people say because it's going to become their mantra. And this is the second or third time I've heard Mayorkas say this out loud when he's being grilled for several months. And it's going to start being the drumbeat as we get closer to the election. And that is simply, the immigration system is broken. The immigration system is not broken. Sure, do we need to go through and comb through the immigration laws and get rid of all the loopholes? Absolutely. But what is happening, and later in that video, Ron Johnson goes on and says, wait a minute, you're saying the immigration system's broken, but the same immigration system that you said is broken prior to Biden taking office almost had the border completely secure. I'm telling you from 24 years experience in the Border Patrol. My last year was spent under Biden's traitorous administration, and I saw what was going to happen. No one could even comprehend to the extent of treason that Biden and Mayorkas is doing. But I knew that we were in danger. If Trump was reelected, which I believe he was, and that's for another podcast, we were within 6 to 9 months of his second term of having the border completely secured and shut down. Let me give you just a quick glimpse of how different it is today, or actually how different it was the day Biden took office in January of 2021 and when Trump was winding down his career as president. his term. I would get 24-hour daily reports. In these 24-hour daily reports, it would show me every sector of the United States Border Patrol, northern border, southern border, both coastlines, Florida, and tell me how many people were arrested. We were arresting at the end of Trump's presidency anywhere from 150 to 450 people a day in 24 hours. That is nothing. That's not even a drop in the bucket. The day that Joe Biden won the election, we watched in horror before he even became in office as those numbers began to tick up immediately. We immediately saw caravans with t-shirts saying, Joe Biden's my president. Thank you, Joe Biden. And by the time Joe Biden took office, those 150 to 400 arrests daily jumped over 5,000 overnight. And we began releasing everybody. And now the number has creeped up to almost 12,000 a day. That's shocking when you start to think about it. And then you start thinking about all the SIAs and terrorists that they've allowed into our country. People are not even arguing anymore that if they're terrorists in the nation. They're saying they're here. The argument now is how many are here? And then the further argument is, will there be some kind of terrorist event in America? Our leaders are telling us now, prepare yourself. There will be an event. And that should scare you, because what they're doing is they're preparing you for the actual event, meaning they don't want something just to explode and bombs are going off in America. People are being slaughtered at airports and movie theaters by jihadists. And then them saying, well, we didn't know. They're starting to prepare you, saying, yes, we knew, we've been tracking them. Look at us. We're so great. We're going to save you. No, they're just preparing you because they know that they've allowed them into our country. I want to take you to another video too. I'm going to show you. Let me share my screen one more time. Let me see. Yeah.
So you're recognized for your questions. Thank you so much. Mr. Secretary, approximately how many illegal aliens in this country or here on asylum have direct ties to Hamas, to Hezbollah, to the Islamic Jihad or the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps of Iran?
Senator Marshall, let me assure you that the individuals that pose a risk to our national security are our highest enforcement priority. The safety and security of the American public.
Do you have any idea how many
is our
numbers,
highest
what those
mission.
numbers are? Is it tens? Is it hundreds? Is it thousands?
An individual who poses a risk to our national security is our highest enforcement priority. And if
So you don't know the answer to the question?
And if detention is indeed warranted by reason of the risk they present, then we indeed detain them.
Do you have an answer for my question?
I believe I have answered your question.
No, sir, you didn't. I asked you how many have direct ties to Hamas, Hezbollah, Islam Jihad.
Senator, if an
That's shocking, isn't it? When you hear that man filibuster, knowing that he's allowed hundreds of thousands of special interest aliens / terrorists into our nation. It's unbelievable. Let me give you an example of how insane this is. And Brian, when he comes on, he and I were doing prep for the show, and we were talking about this. And I said to him, Brian, do you remember the guy that I sent? One of my sources sent me a photo of. He is an Afghan former high-level secretary, like a former equivalent of a Secretary of State in the Afghan military, the one that just fell. And my guys in Imperial Beach Border Patrol Station found him sitting on a grassy knoll just across the border and just waiting to be arrested like a general. They arrested him. Now I'm being told that individual has just been released with his family that was already here and given a notice to appear. We released a high-ranking Afghan military personnel into America. 3 weeks prior to this happened now going on 10 days ago. Okay. The arrest of this gentleman 10 days ago. He was released, I want to say, about less than a week ago. Prior to that 10 days, which would be a month ago, on that same grassy knoll, a high-ranking, one of the highest-ranking ISIS recruiters crossed the border and squatted on that grassy knoll, and we arrested him. Joint Terrorism Task Force, JTTF, came and took him away from the Imperial Beach Border Patrol Station. Now, stop for a second and ask yourself, why are high-ranking ISIS recruiters and leaders and high-ranking military people from foreign nations crossing the border in very specific areas and just sitting there and waiting to get arrested? There are two reasons. The cartels own that area, and they've already made determinations on where these people are going to cross. American high-level intel knows that they're crossing there. Don't be fooled that the Afghan Special Forces, the Afghan Secretary of State actually crossed that border area unknown. Two, and this is even more nefarious and more frightening to me, because I believe this is really what's happening, is other high-ranking terrorist leaders have crossed in that area, were arrested, and were released. And they have called back and said, this is where you're supposed to cross. Don't worry, they're not going to find you. They'll release you. And I know that's happening because in April and May this year, this was the drug cartels and the human smuggling cartels in Mexico used Imperial Beach as the passageway of all Middle Eastern men and men from the continent of Africa. They were there by the thousands every day. The Border Patrol would take in 500 or 600, and they would have 500 or 600 more jump the fence. I saw the pictures. I talked to all the agents. They were all Middle Eastern, African, continent of African, military-age men, all of them. What made this even more frightening was my former agents called me and said, listen, man, we call red bars. When you put someone's fingerprints on the database and it runs it through DHS database, FBI database, and terrorist watch list, you actually get a red bar that comes across. So when I put that individual name in, and they can give me whatever the hell they want. The guy could be Mohammed Sheikh, and he would just say, my name's, JJ Carroll. Okay, JJ Carroll, because he has no documents. But then, because fingerprints won't lie, actual red bar will show up on his name, and then it's that way to alert the agent, okay, I have something of a criminal alien, and you have to click on the red bar, and then it gives you downloads, cascades, all the information. My agents were telling me, because these guys work for me, and I just call them my agents because they're my brothers and sisters, were saying that they were getting 50 red bars a day, meaning they would bring in 500 to 600 illegal aliens from this grassy knoll area called Spooner's Mesa, which is about 1.5 miles from the Pacific Ocean. It's a flat, high point in Imperial Beach. It's a beautiful view of Coronado and San Diego skyline, but it's the major hub for a lot of human smuggling. In 24-hour period, they would bring in 500 to 600 people and process all 500, 600 of them. 50 of them would hit the red bar. 50 of them would hit terrorist watch list. 50. Every day, 5 would be confirmed terrorist. Every day. That's why I know the DHS lies about how many terrorists that they've arrested. Of those, the other 45, they could not determine if when you do this, you do cross-reference, you have JTTF comes in and does interviews. Well, there's so many special interest aliens that JTTF, that task force, does not have enough personnel to do it. So average run-of-the-mill Border Patrol agents that are completely overrun and overwhelmed in their stations are trying to determine who is a terrorist and who's not. We do not. The average Border Patrol agent has not been trained to interrogate terrorists, nor do they have access to certain databases that JTTF would have. What was shocking to me is I asked my guys, okay, they're obviously special interest aliens. They've been hit on the terrorist watch list. What did what did you do? Did you like turn them over to ICE, then ICE flies them back to Morocco, Syria, Afghanistan? No, they told me we just released them. And this was before the big SIA scandal hit. And like I said, this was back in April, in May. And I said, what? You just released them? Like you can't determine that they're elite, that they're not a terrorist, but you just released them? Yeah, man. And this is what they all say. Yeah, and I'm petrified. I'm scared out of my mind because I know I'm releasing terrorists. Now, let me try to put this in context before I go full circle and tell you what Brian said to me, which was very intriguing and spot on. It's because Brian has a different, that's what I love about what he and I are doing. I have a very more law enforcement centric mind and dive into it. He has that very analytical, intelligent, analyst driven mind that's thinking on another plane than I am. And I think it's a great partnership. Prior to Joe Biden coming in office, okay, if I received, I worked in Pearl Beach, let's just use that place. If I arrested, or one of my guys arrested let's say a guy from Korea, okay, North Korea, it'd be a special interest alien, right? So a special interest alien comes into our custody, everything stops. JTTF is called in. My guys put this individual in a hard cell by himself, locked down. We actually know that person does not move within the cell without a certain person having responsibility over him because he's a high profile illegal alien. JTTF comes in, they determine he's an alien, is a terrorist. They take that individual and like in Men in Black, that movie, they just disappear, right? I don't know what they do with them. I don't know if they turn them, they deport them, they put them in jail. I don't know. I don't care. That's in law enforcement. It's weird. We kind of just, okay, I'm done. This is your problem now. I have more things that I have to take care of. But it works, right? It just always worked. If the JTTF was not able to determine that this individual, it was the person that red barred, meaning his name and date of birth and his picture, his fingerprints said this, but we cannot make that full connection that this guy is truly a terrorist. Well, I would take that person back into my custody, and then I would turn him over to ICE, and ICE would have a flight back to North Korea, Syria, Afghanistan, Iran, somewhere. And that person would never see the light of day. He'd go from a hard cell to a van. A van would take him to Metropolitan Corrections, downtown San Diego, or to some ICE holding facility off-site. And then that person would be flown back to their nation of origin. Never in 23 years of my 24-year career did we ever release an SIA. Never. I would be suspended if I did that. Let me even go further. I have arrested probably 10,000 people plus in my career, directly or indirectly. It's an incredible number because it's huge masses of humanity crossing, like real arrests, not the cross the border and give up. These were chases and fights and getting handcuffs on people or zip tying them. In 23 years on the border, I never, ever released one individual into America. Not one. That was unheard of. So when we start thinking about, we see Ron Johnson discussing this, or the other Senator Marshall from Kansas, where I'm from now, my senator, and he starts asking them about what have you've released all these people. I need the audience to understand this is not historic precedent. This is the last 35 months that we've done this. We have never done. It's hard for me to articulate fully because people can't wrap their brain around. Wait a minute, JJ. They've arrested and released almost 8 million people to date, but you're telling me you never released anybody in 23 years. Yes, that's how crazy it is. And Brian's joining us now. And I wanted to go back and finalize this, come full circle on this story of special interest aliens and terrorists coming to our nation, Brian said something very interesting. And he said, the enemy always sends in their soldiers first and their generals last. And I started thinking, holy crap, you're absolutely right. They have been sending in their soldiers, their terrorists, for months now, and now they're sending in their generals. And it really clicked. That is incredibly insightful, and it just passed me by. And it should make America scared out of their mind. There's Brian right now. Brian, I was just talking about the equivalent of like a Secretary of State of the Afghan military and Afghan government that just came on the border in San Diego less than 2 weeks ago. And just crossed the border, squatted on the grassy knoll, and waited for Border Patrol agents to come arrest them. And then what do? We just release them into America.
Yeah,
This is crazy times.
It is, and it's and I'm glad we talked this today, because it was actually when you were talking and you brought that up, it was just weighing on me. I'm like, why would this guy just sit and wait? And then, I don't even know why he turned himself over, but I have to think to get a ride to go meet his contacts unmolested. I mean, why else would this guy turn himself over? Obviously, he knew he'd get released.
Mm-hmm. They all know they're getting released. That's the scary part. Is they send people over right prior to them, and they're all getting released. So they're making the phone call back. Hey, you're gonna have to sit in a cell for like 3 or 4 or 5 days, and then they're gonna give you some kind of stupid paperwork, and you're gonna walk out the door. And I can actually hear them on the other end, talk. I can imagine this conversation like, no, bro, you're lying to me. Are you setting me up? No, sir. You just crossed and you sit in this area, and some guy is going to come pick you up with a white Jeep or a pickup that has a green stripe that says Border Patrol. And then you're going to go and they're going to feed you 3 burritos a day and some juice and crackers. And it's going to be boring for about 3 days, and they're going to release you. I can imagine the high-level terrorists on the other end going, there's no way, I don't believe this. There's no way America is this broken. And them saying, no, sir, they're that broken. It's insane. I'm sitting in a processing area. When I was there was 1,000 people. It was mass chaos. They don't even know who's who. And that's true.
Yeah. Well, look, first of all, I apologize for being late, everyone. I was on another podcast that went over. I'm on a grand jury team led by Dr. Henry Ely out of Arizona with Senators Linthicum and Senators Thatcher from Oregon. I've been on that team for about 3 years now. I can't believe so much time has passed by. So it was good to see everyone on there, and it's good to see so many podcasts happening tonight for different things: legal, medical, health freedom, school, Tiffany Justice out there with the wonderful Moms for Liberty. So you get a feeling of how many different battles there are for freedom. These things are all part of a war. And, anyone who can't see it now is willfully blind. But it's on that note of these terrorists, JJ, I think, I don't think the terrorists are maybe showing disbelief, though. That'd be my guess. And the reason I say that is because I think back to Afghanistan. Okay. And so Afghanistan fell. We allowed it to fall. Biden, not us. Biden did. But Afghanistan goes down. And right when it goes down, first of all, we close the airport first, which if you're going to evacuate a place, you don't close the military airport first. That's the last thing you close. Second, what's his name? Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense. He was in Iraq and he did multiple evacuations of larger scale in some cases. So you can't say he didn't know what he was doing. He knew exactly how to do this. He had
Mhm.
recent experience. And then you look at, I've got some slides here. Unfortunately, I couldn't find the picture. What I really noticed when I was looking at Afghanistan, and that was August 15th, 2021, we left behind tons of brand new equipment. And I'll put up the images when we do when we post the recast here. But I zoomed in on some of these images, and you could still see the fibers on the tires. You know those new fibers, like you
Mhm.
buy. They were still on there. This was
Yeah.
not accidentally left behind. This was a payment, and we
You
also
think
left.
so?
I do, I do, and I'm going to get into
Can
why.
you expand on that? Because that's a big statement.
Yeah, let me get into that in a second, because the other payment that I believe, this one I can't prove. I can't prove either, but I'm going to give you a preponderance, I believe, of evidence. Um, the other thing is that we left behind so many journalists and civilians and everything like that. I believe that was for one of two reasons. Either A, the Biden administration didn't want them to live to talk of what they'd been seeing in Afghanistan. And by that, I mean uniformed Pakistani soldiers fighting side by side with the Taliban, Pakistanis ushering, and Taliban ushering Chinese geologists in to the country, multiple hydro dam projects by the Chinese all across Afghanistan. And why is this significant? Why geologists? Afghanistan happens to be one of the largest natural deposits of semi-precious minerals,
Mhm.
same ones that are used in the production of semiconductor wafers. Oh, and by the way, the other huge deposit is Tibet. So there's that. And the reason I say, maybe so they won't talk about what they'd see, but also there's another thing. Most journalists have something called travel risk insurance, okay, or most executives. And what that is if you go on a trip, you pay for this travel risk insurance. And what it is, it's basically insurance against not getting kidnapped, but it's insurance to make sure someone pays your ransom and you come home. I know this
Right.
because I used to work in a private security firm owned by a British gentleman who's now an American, great guy, still a friend. But we would do, a lot of this type work and a lot of the negotiations. And it's not like Proof of Life with Russell Crowe. It's literally a business where there's a phone call, there's a grid coordinate, you drop off the money, the person's returned. It's like that. It's the most boring thing you could have ever imagined, considering the stakes. Well, each of these people is worth about $100,000. So that's why I say they may have been a payment as well, because each one of those people, and this is how much of a business it is in Africa and many countries like Somalia. The people that provide travel risk insurance, they have a list of tribes and gangs, and they call them KFR gangs, or kidnap for ransom. And they have a list of approved gangs that they are allowed to negotiate with. And so it's a business that's self-perpetuating, meaning no one screws it up, because if you screw up and you torture your hostages, you're not going to get paid. That
Right.
international firm will not do business with you, and the tribal elders tend to enforce it. So you have the same thing in Afghanistan. You have the same thing in so many countries. And so when I saw the level of some of the people left behind there, some of these people are like executives and journalists, and they are worth money for the ransom. And it's not like they're going to call the families and say, "Hey, give us $1 million." No, they're just going to call. They have the number. They're going to call the insurance company and say, "Hey, we got this guy, this guy, this guy. What is their premium?" They're like, "Oh, it's 100,000. We'll give you 75,000 each." Boom, transaction made. And so it'd be interesting to watch which people come home and how they get home. And so it just felt very purposeful that all those weapons, all that equipment. I mean, you do realize that Taliban now is probably one of the best armed militaries in Middle East, Near East, Far East.
Yes.
Because of us. Now, flash
They
forward.
have aircraft. We left aircraft there.
Apaches, Humvees. We left about 100 pickup trucks. But the biggest thing we left behind that scares me the most is night vision. And one of the things that used to give the U.S. military a huge advantage over most countries we fought was night vision. And it seems like a small thing, but it's not.
No, it's huge.
It's huge. And the reason I also say that that stuff was left behind is on purpose, is because if you look at the pictures of the so-called ISIS-K, which I'm sorry is not really a thing, ISIS-K, for, we'll just use the term, all of the uniforms, they're wearing our uniforms, fit them perfectly and were put on themselves, sleeves rolled up the right way, the helmets on perfectly, the way they lace their boots in the military. There's a very specific Army regulation. When I was in, it was called AR 670-1. But every single thing on your uniform has to be folded, rolled up in a certain manner. You can't just like roll up your sleeves. You got to do it a certain way. You have to tuck your laces into your boots and then tuck your cargo pants into your socks and then push that down under the leather topmost exterior of your boots. They had all of that stuff on perfectly, I noticed, and it fit perfectly. Now, how often does that happen? These guys are all posing. They've got their fingers off the trigger, which you rarely see with terrorists because they don't care if they have accidental discharges. And then the other thing that I want to stress here, and look, my point of all of this is I think we gave Afghanistan to Pakistan at the urging of China. And the reason I say that is because Taliban's command and control is actually in Pakistan and always was. And it wasn't in Afghanistan. And so what ended up happening is, and also during August 15th, when all hell was breaking loose and all the way to the end of the month, do you know China never closed their embassy in Kabul?
Really?
Never closed it. Now, what does that tell you? So
it tells you they were off limits, that they're their partners, and you're not gonna mess with it.
So, yeah, exactly. So let me take you back in time here. So we're gonna try to do a screen share here. our biggest Achilles heel. So Blinken and Jack Kirby and all these Biden administration people, were claiming, oh no, the Taliban's ready to fight. It's their fault. They dropped the ball. They said they were ready to fight. That's why we left. Well, that's not true. Okay. They also said, Blinken also pretended he was caught off guard. ISIS-K, Now keep in mind, ISIS-K, just a sidebar, the K is Khorasan group. Okay, so after ISIS Prime, whatever you want to call it, the big ISIS, went down, they tried to after Al-Qaeda went down, after bin Laden was killed and all that, out of Syria, there was this it barely made the news, but the State Department and DoD officials started talking about this Khorasan group. Well, at best it was 19 people, and I do have these documents. At best it was like 19 people, and according to the State Department, Khorasan group had gone off to North Africa, so they're not really a threat. So if you recall, August 15th, it falls. Okay, Afghanistan falls. Tragic loss of life there for, the Afghani people, but also, our translators, but most importantly, our service members, men and women, real young. And it breaks my heart thinking about it because I always remember those Marines standing there on the Connex, looking around, and you got the sea of this crazy mob, and they're just what a feeling of utter, oblivion. I don't even know the word, but anyways, so Blinken had this whole song and dance about like, oh, we were caught off guard. Well, let me share my screen. Let me show you a couple things here. He's full of it. Okay, he is full of it. He's a liar. He's a liar because he was told. Not only was he told by our intelligence veterans, but he was told by the Afghani people themselves, the Afghani officials. Told him, no. If we have better leadership, yeah, but we've got a big problem here. He was also told, and this was never mentioned in the news, Blinken was also told that, or would have known, let me say it that way, that there were uniformed Pakistanis working alongside Taliban in and around Afghanistan at the time. Okay, and that never made the news. No one ever heard about that. So let me share my screen, and I'm going to show you, not just tell you what I'm talking about. Okay, so do this. All right, here we go. All right, so there is my screen. All right, so this is April 5th, 2021. As you can see here, and I've got the links, the link's right there, and I'll post this for everyone. In April of 2021, top U.S. envoys say terror threat has moved from Afghanistan. This is what Blinken said. Now you got Burns down there, Petraeus, and saying, hey, this is not good. This country is going to go into chaos. Meanwhile, Blinken saying, oh, no, terrorism, it's moved to other places. And we have other very important items on our agenda, including the relationship with China, not the threat of China, the relationship of China, and including with dealing from everything from climate change to COVID. Climate change to COVID.
God, I hate these people. I just have to say, I know hate is a sin, but I hate these people.
I hate them too.
I hate them.
Never hated the totals. I've never hated my enemies abroad like this.
Because at least the enemies you're fighting, you're like, okay, well, they have their set of beliefs and they're fighting for it. These are supposed to be our people. Wait a minute. And before you continue, this is the same Blinken, right, that cobbled together the 100 CIA specialists, high-level people, and created that.
I don't know if he cobbled them together, but yes, it was reported in Natasha Bertram of Politico, who now, of course, is, I think, CNN, published it. And yes, it was some big number who said, oh, no, the laptop's fake. And
they never saw it. They lied about it.
No, they had to know. The FBI had the laptop. They knew. They lied.
All right, continue. I'm sorry. The level of deceit and the level of maliciousness of our own government. If you cannot at least connect some of the dots, why would you trust our government in any facet? In any facet, Brian, of any deliver mail? How do you know they're not looking at your mail? The Patriot Act says they can tap into my phone whenever they want, whenever they think that JJ Carroll's a terrorist. I mean, go on.
Well,
I hate these people.
You're about to hate them even more when I show you this next thing. Hold on just a second. All right. So now the next one, let me share this. Okay. Let me take that screen down. Sorry, everyone. We will get better at this. Always looking for a producer. All right. So now take this one down. All right. So the next one is this. There's got to be an easier way to do this. Okay. So now you go. That was what I say, April. Yep. Okay. Here we go. You're going to love this. All right. April 16th, 2021. You are going to like this. This is when he says, by the way, the Taliban in the agreement reached by Trump administration with the Taliban is also committed, this is Blinken talking, not to allow al-Qaeda or other terrorist groups that might target the United States to reemerge. We're going to hold them to that commitment. I mean, I swear to God, this guy's only experience with terrorism is probably when he watched True Lies with his kids. Yeah, I mean, who does he think he's talking to?
Can I interrupt you just for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I think this is very important, and if anything, more so for me, I just want to hear, because I know what your answer probably is going to be, but I have to ask it. it's like people talking about the border and saying, well, you really need to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm looking at the guy, and he doesn't have calluses on his hands. His fingernails are perfect as a man, and he's got a suit on perfect. He's about 5'3", 135 pounds, and he's telling me how or people on the border how we should handle criminals. Does it infuriate you like it infuriates me to look at someone like Blinken and know that if he ever was in the presence of a terrorist, that he would crap his pants and he would ball up in a fetal position and cry? Does that make you feel the same way that I do when I hear people tell me, well, we need to be kinder and gentler to criminals?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it doesn't even bother me. I'm just so used to seeing this level of idiocy. There's two worlds in, and this is every. I can't speak for the Trump administration. I was not in the intel community when he was president.
Yeah.
I was in the private economy of intelligence. That's a whole nother thing that should scare people. But what I always noticed was this: when I was in a special forces unit, and we went to southern Philippines, for instance, after 9/11, we went down there to Zamboanga, and that was JTF 510. And the reason, well, to be quite honest, I don't know why we sent an entire special forces group to deal with something called the Abu Sayyaf group. A group is like, it's like somewhere between a battalion and a brigade size. It's big, and it's all Green Berets. I was in the special forces intelligence detachments. We were the tactical units that would go out and create a net of intelligence to protect our teams. So we get down there, but because there were 2 American hostages being held by the Abu Sayyaf group, the FBI was, of course, has some jurisdiction there. So they would come in, and they'd send a new FBI person every 2 weeks. And we're out there forever. And it was par for the course. I've been to worse places. But the FBI would come in and just start making demands. And they have no idea what's going on. And then we would have PR. They'd assign PR to us, like PR officers from the military, from the Pentagon. And at least 3 times they blew operations by letting the Philippine National Police know what we were, because we got to let them know, because
of course we got. It's insane.
Yep. And so I saw that, but what was worse is I was a contractor, and our client was a certain agency that I can't legally say who the client was because that would be a violation. But let's just say it was in Northern Virginia. But anyways, I went overseas one time to do something very important all alone. I got I went through a pretty arduous journey to get what I had to get done accomplished. And I know I'm talking in broad strokes. I have to. But it was really well done, I think. And to the point where the government senior person I was working with and for did a nice write-up and everything. Like, he couldn't believe what I accomplished. And it was like planes, trains, and automobiles. I even had to hire a donkey cart to get to the next town. But the point is, I got it done. And I got back to the headquarters of my client, as one of the premier agencies, and I got in trouble. And I got in trouble, not by my firm, but by the client, the agency, because I'd missed sensitivity training. I can't make this up.
I have PTSD. You're bringing me back to all of this insanity of
this is 2012ish. This is like 2012ish.
Oh my God. Yeah. I know.
And that's when I started seeing it move. It was moving in this idiotic, but what happens is this. People forget, look, they see the movies and they see like the intelligence organizations and they see the West Wing and they think that's how it really is. I mean, and that's fine. I mean, if you're not in an industry, what meter do you have? So I don't begrudge anyone for that. But what people forget is this. There's headquarters, which is stateside for every agency and the military as well. And then there's the people in the field doing things, whether they're contractors or GS employees. It doesn't
Right.
matter. Those are two different cultures altogether. And so the people on the ground, they actually know what's going on. Of course they
Yep.
do, because they're talking to the sources. They're there. It's like
Yes.
Ben Bergquam on the border. It's like you had an interview with some liberal people I saw when I met you, and I was doing my due diligence on you, JJ. And but I was I could see your frustration. You were talking to these guys who'd never been to the border or that part of the
Yeah.
border.
I
You were having
remember
an
telling me about
argument
the
about
wall.
why don't you tell really quickly just that, and I'll get back to my point.
I
What
just got
happened in that
invited
conversation?
to a podcast about my book, and I had two gentlemen from the state of New York that have never been to the border, self-admitted, I've never been to the border, telling me about how much border wall was built and what that wall looked like and how effective it was. And I was just like, okay, are you guys punking me? Is this an old 1990s 2000 punk podcast? Well, I mean, are you guys serious? And I finally, I don't know if you remember this, Brian. I said, wait a minute. I was there. You're talking to a guy that lived it, not some guy that is writing about it for the Atlantic. You guys are you're in New York State, and you're telling me that what the border looks like? Are you kidding me? I wrote a book about it. Oh my God, I thought it was going to come out of my skin.
But that,
dude. I can't believe that's what you saw. That's your due diligence.
That's a great example of what I'm talking about, because what has happened is there is a hubris that has gone with, I'd say primarily the left, okay? Or not even the left. I would say primarily with the doers and the talkers.
Yep.
Okay. And
I
the
agree.
talkers, that's all they've got is the talk. They have major imposter syndrome, in my opinion, from the ones I've met. And they know damn well they wouldn't know what the hell to do if they went out there. Now, people in the field be willing to teach them, one team, one fight. But see, they'll never go out there because not only are a lot of them scared, but a lot of them don't want to be found out as not being competent in everything, which is stupid. Who's competent in everything?
No one.
That'd be like me telling you, hey, JJ, when we get to the border, you follow my lead. The only part of the border I've been to is Tijuana when I was drunk as like a soldier and I was like 19 years old. And I go down there because I was under 21, so... You know what I mean? So
I interrupt you just for a second. Tell you that when you said the FBI, when you said I'm sorry, Mike. When you said FBI, that it flashed back, right? So we would get, and you said these. I can envision what you were saying, where you had the FBI would show up in the field, and we would have that, Brian, where we have shootings or deadly force situations, knives, fights, whatever, assaults on federal agents. So the audience knows the FBI has jurisdiction over all alphabet law enforcement agencies when there's an assault on an agent or there's some kind of civil rights or something involved. And I can remember multiple times guys showing up in almost suits with their beautiful polished shoes, which I appreciate. I love it. I love a good suit. But they'd come up and I remember supervisor, I would say, okay, I'll take you up to where we're going to go. And I would look at them and
they came out to the border in suits.
Yeah. And I would say,
I mean, ours at least had some new high techs and some LLB invests.
No, they would come in the office and then we would talk, right? I'd show them the reports and they'd say, okay, I want to go see the crime scene, right? Or the altercation where it took place. And I would go, bro, we're on the border. I mean, you want to walk out there in your, $800, $900 suit? I said, we're going to walk a trail and you're going to fall down and there's going to be thorn bushes grabbing. You're going to look like.
Well, not only that, they're major sniper targets in that suit. I mean, if I'm a sniper and I'm on the cartel side, I'm going to shoot the guy with the suit.
But it was just so different. The worlds are so different, right? the same team, but we're so uniquely different. And I mean, God bless them. I love the FBI. You know, my brother-in-law was high up in the FBI,
Sure.
but you know,
But JJ, it's like I said, it's two different worlds. Like the people you're talking about and the people I'm talking about were always deployed from DC, always from headquarters. And it's
Yeah.
always the people from headquarters who are the problem because they
Mhm.
come out and they're told they're in charge. And it could be any agency, anything. And because they're, and it's also a problem too, because no matter what intel you give them, so let's flash back to Afghanistan. You're on the ground in Afghanistan. You're giving you're sending your cables up or your TAC reports, whatever you want to, whatever agency you're in. And there's a lot of info, and it's written into a summary, and then that summary goes up to the different agencies, and those summaries all come together in a pretty big report from all like imagery intelligence, signals intelligence, human intelligence, that sort of thing. And then that is boiled down to a couple of pages called the President's Daily Brief, the PDB.
Mhm.
And it is up to some bureaucrat to decide what the president even sees. But but the person that does see the intel is definitely the Secretary of State. Okay, no one's controlling what he sees. Granted,
No.
he's not going to see raw intelligence because you don't want to reveal the sources. But he's going to see the unabridged version of the brief, and he's deciding what's going to stay in it. Okay, now you do have the DNI that's supposed to brief and all that, but I don't want to get into that minutia of what a tangled mess that is, because the Secretary of State and whatever top intel agency person is there, those are all political appointees. So even the director of the CIA that's a political appointee. So they're going to do exactly what the administration wants, and there's the shoot the messenger thing they want to avoid. Hey, how are we doing over there? We want to get out of Afghanistan. Is there a threat? No, there's not. Okay. Meanwhile, you have reports like this. Okay. Now, just so everyone knows, if you could see, sorry, let me get this screen up. There we go. It is always, there we go. So, as you can see, this is from this is from the State Department. Okay, this isn't Twitter. This isn't anything like that. Granted, I put it on Twitter, but this is from the State Department. This is an approved transcript of the press conference. So he said this. I mean, he said, "But look, the other thing is, we are very much invested in trying to pursue the peace process for Afghanistan." What peace process? They were marauding through the place. Like they're raging through Afghanistan. The Taliban, not the unicorn terrorists called ISIS-K. Ultimately, it is in no one's interest in Afghanistan, whether it's the Taliban or anyone else, and certainly not the people of Afghanistan, for the country to descend once again into civil war, into a long war. And if the Taliban is going to participate in some fashion in governance, if it wants to be internationally recognized, if it doesn't want to be a pariah, it's going to have to engage in a political process. Okay, this is called Western hubris. Okay, and this is April of 2021. Before I get into all that, let me keep going because I know everyone's like, just get to the evidence. I see Ernie Jansen, the cousin's back. I'm waiting for him to give me hell to get to the evidence, Brian. So, okay. So now, let's go to the next one. Okay, stop that screen end. So now the next one. So that was April. Yep, that was April 16th. Now here comes the other one. Now I put these up. I actually sent these to everyone I knew, including the Public Affairs Office, State Department, everyone. Okay, so not that I expect them to see it, but you can't say they didn't know because, he's advised in the first slide I showed by very seasoned people. I think Petraeus kind of knows what he was doing, and he just ignored him. So the next one is, now keep in mind, remember when when we pulled out of Afghanistan, remember the administration kept blaming the Defense Force. They said, hey, they said they had it. We trained them. They said they're ready. It's not our fault. They said they were ready. That's kind of BS too. And you have Blinken saying back there in April that you just saw it like, no, I think the terror threat has moved on and all that. So like I'm laughing out of the sheer frustration. Here we go. So this is going to blow your mind. This is going to piss. I want to see some angry faces down there in the stream. And JJ, I actually need you to watch the YouTube. I'm going to just switch over to the Rumble one because I don't want to neglect them. We have Rumble tonight. Okay, so here we go. Daily Mail reports now. This is April 20. This is a week, 10 days later, a week later. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken admits Afghanistan could be taken over by Taliban or descend into civil war when U.S. withdraws troops by 20th anniversary of 9/11. So
when was
what
this?
did they do?
When was this?
This is April of 2021, April 27th, right here. And
God almighty.
they're worried. And this is, and again, it was Trump's idea to pull out in a kind of a de-escalation fashion, which made sense, kind of gradually. And that's why the 9/11 type thing was there. And look, Trump knew that they had to get out by 9/11 because they'd be some weird attack. But so he says this, he's like blinking, to send into civil war when the U.S. troops withdraw by the 20th anniversary of 9/11. So what is this moron thinking? Oh, we'll show them. We'll pull out earlier, just overnight, And that's what they did. They shut down everything. They killed the power. They abandoned the airport. Half the freaking troops didn't even know they were gone, and none of the civilians knew except for the ones that probably knew Anthony Blinken, who, by the way, was
Brian,
in Hampton.
Yeah, I have to stop there and just ask a question. I know the audience is asking.
It's already got so animated over this. This one pisses me off.
No, but it has to be like you and I talked about this a little bit today on our show prep. Is when this happened, the very first thing I thought was, okay, hold on a second. This is military 101. They did everything you would do if you never been in this situation before in your life. And the people that are running it, they can't be that stupid. There's no way that they did this happenstance and just made this bad mistake. Me as well as a lot of people in high level positions agree that this was done strategically. Just continually put America at odds with the world, show our weakness, capitulate, and what you're saying is there's probably even more nefarious reasons why this happened. Do you agree with that? Do you agree that this is not just morons?
No, this is not. And actually, Trevor Loudon, who I deeply respect, and probably the foremost expert on the insider threat, as well as of communism and Marxism, but also just of what's going on. I mean, Trevor Loudon's fantastic. I believe you did an interview with him, didn't you? Weren't you?
Yes,
on
I
his...
did. Yes. Yeah.
Well, post that. And I was supposed to be, so I need to get back to him. Sorry, Mr. Loudon. I will get back to you. I'm way late. The days go by too quickly, but super, probably the between him and Frank Gaffney and Bradley Thayer, those are the people to follow. The reason I bring up Trevor Loudon is he said something really, really that had an impact on me. And it was there, but I hadn't thought about it. He was asked, well, do you think these people are just incompetent? He goes, well, if it was just incompetence, every now and then something might play out in our favor.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
He said, but this is 100% in favor of not the terrorists so much, the Chinese Communist Party. Okay, so for all the people out there saying, oh, here comes Brian with his China thing. Yeah, you're damn right. And I'm going to show you why. So here's my theory on Afghanistan. Okay, for whatever reason, we gave it to the Chinese via the Taliban, who pretty much acts as the Chinese security force guarding those precious minerals. And we had to know this. We had to know that the biggest customer for these minerals was the Chinese Communist Party. And why did we need to know that? How could we know that? I'll tell you why. Is because it was published. It wasn't a secret. Let me show you. It was published, and right. Okay, so I am going to stop that and add another one. JJ, we got someone in the chat sent us like a great tutorial for how to go through slides. All right, so
I had no problem with mine, Brian. I was right on the money today.
I could see you. I could see what's going on over there.
I'm just saying that I was right on the money today.
Why do you gotta hurt me, man? Why do you gotta do that? Are you mad because I was late? Well, check this out, man. This is July. Okay. Remember, Blinken said we got to work on that relationship with China. Now, keep in mind, we've invested billions in Afghanistan, billions. That's taxpayer money that we gave to the Chinese because even while we were there, the Chinese were reaping the benefits of the mineral deposits. Here you go. This is on the Afghani government's website. Okay. And what I did is when everything went down, the first thing I did was I downloaded everything off the AF websites because I knew once the Taliban was in. All right, so what's that headline read? July 14th, 2021, 64% increase in exports to China from the Afghani Ministry of Industry and Commerce. July 14th, almost a month before we abandoned Afghanistan, knowing that they're having great commerce with the Afghani government that we built. We rebuilt.
Yep.
We rebuilt the banking systems, the army, everything, and gave it to the Chinese. I don't see how anyone can look at this any differently. So if you go here, I have all these links, and yes, I have index them. So 64% increase in domestic products exports for the first quarter. Like things are booming over there. By the way, the fiscal years are a little weird over there. So don't think this is like the year 1399. But pretty much the one that you should pay attention to is right there. Okay, right there.
Can you read that?
And you see that is the semi-precious minerals. Okay, they have a sandwich between fruit and saffron and all that, but that's the key one right there. Okay, 64% increase. 64% increase.
Yeah, but you know what's gonna drive crazy? What drives me crazy, and I know it's driving all our listeners crazy too, is what you said. Not giving all of this to China. That's just salt in the wound, right? But a bad wound. It's the fact that we rebuilt a complete nation when our nation is in shambles. Our schools are inadequate. Do you know you have schools in places like Arkansas, South Dakota, Chicago, where they don't have air conditioning? Do you understand that?
Know that?
They don't have air conditioning. In the South, in Arkansas, don't have air conditioning.
Dude, they don't have heat. They don't have heat in some of the Ivy League schools.
And you look at our airports. Look at New York's airports. They look like third world cesspools. Like you'd fly into a third world dominated misery. But we rebuilt their airports. Look, they're saying General Flynn came out with a tweet the other day, and he was right on. We've spent $7 trillion with a T in the Middle East. $7 trillion, Brian. Brian, we could have redone every road. We could have redone the whole highway system, all our airports, all our hospitals, all our schools, everything in America. Everything could be. We could look like it would like you came in and bulldozed an old house and built a mansion.
We could look
like
Singapore.
Had that in America.
No.
But we rebuilt nations that hate us. Think about this.
Keep in mind,
I'll let you get back to what you're saying. Think of the money in trillions of dollars infused into a circle. Think of a circle, and it just goes around and it comes back to where it started, but it gets pushed out to all the politicians' pockets. It's the greatest transfer and theft of wealth in the history of mankind.
Well, yeah, because a lot of that, look, I mean, and most of the money does not even go to the countries. Most of the money
No,
goes right back to the politicians.
of course it does.
Right back to the politicians. And I would recommend anyone. I will gladly put up my research on this. I never say anything that I cannot cite, as you can see. So remember, they said, "Oh, it's the Afghani, defense force. We train them." They said they're ready and all this, and these people were probably practically begging the U.S. to stay. And it's like Blinken and Kirby just kept rolling forward, saying, "No, they say they're good. They say they're good." Meanwhile, the Afghans go, "No, we didn't say that. There's freaking a whole nother country's army in here." Okay, and they tried to whitewash a lot of this stuff. They forgot about the PDF versions of the Kabul Times, which, thank you to a couple YouTube videos on how to do some Google hacking, they were pretty easy to find, or Google Advanced Search. Hacking sounds cooler. So this is my final one. And again, the whole point of this is these people knew. My theory, I'll give you at the end, but I just want to get all this info out. My theory about what's going on right now, and you notice that Blinken is front and center on all the papers again. And you know why? Because he's screwed, okay? He's the fall guy. Whenever you are in the government and you're getting a lot of press time, that's not a good thing unless you're the press secretary, okay? He's on the cover of the Weekend Wall Street Journal. Okay, Blinken all over the place. Okay, so expect that he's going to take the fall for the Democrats in a last-ditch effort to save some face before the election. Okay, and my guess is that they're going to shove Gavin Newsom into the ticket. Biden is going to he's just not going to be running. I just have that feeling, for whatever reason. But they're going to find a reason to make sure he does not get on the ticket, because if you notice, even all of the anti-Israel protests are now shifting, and I think you showed this at the beginning of your thing. They're shifting towards Biden. Biden is the bad guy, and it's interesting. It's weird to see these protesters not blaming Trump for everything. And so,
well, this is not done accidentally.
I know
they have to get rid of Biden. Look at the polls all came out that he's being destroyed by Trump in every category. So none of the narrative in the media just happens, Brian. There's a reason why. So now they're prepping us to be prepared when they push that feeble old bastard out into the pasture where he can die in his $2.7 million mansion he paid for cash on a salary that pays him $150,000 a year. Okay.
Well, we'll talk about that media influence in just a second, because it's beyond that. I mean, like we talked about today, this is other people deciding who's running our government.
Yes, absolutely. I agree.
This is a pretty big cabal that is demonstrable. All the way from the Tides Foundation to the Open Society, whatever it is, Arabella Advisors underneath that. I mean, a lot of these things go up to Soros, but a lot of them also go to the Chinese Communist Party, including the fact that I told you today, NBC in 2015, I believe, Steve Kappas was the CEO at the time, signed a memorandum of cooperation with Xinhua Newsnet, which is the actual Ministry of Propaganda for China. So did Associated Press, like in 2018, and so did Reuters. Those are the news wires that feed the news to all of our news organizations, including Fox.
Crazy, isn't it?
That's why they all talk the same. That's why they all say the same thing, whether it's Fox or anything. It's like the WWF. They're all on the same tour bus. They're all on that Murdoch-owned tour bus. And so, anyways, the last thing I'm going to show you, this is to show that, Blinken, he lied about their them thinking they were ready and them saying they were ready. and I'm just going to show you. And this is from the Kabul Times, okay, and which is a paper that would have been included in any brief from the OSINT people or the open source intelligence people. That would have been included in his morning reading, okay, especially the fact that he's quoted in it. But let me pull this one up here. That is the Wayback Machine. All right. Okay, give me just a second. God. Okay, there it is. I had to scroll. All right. So, and I want to point out when I posted this initially, I didn't have to go to the Wayback Machine to find it. Okay, now it's gone. All right. So, this is, look at the date, man.
So 2021, August 12th.
3 days before the collapse. 3 days before the collapse.
What do they quote him saying in that article, Brian?
Here we go. So, what he's saying here is, okay, so I'm going to actually have slides. I'm going to read off those on one screen, and then, yeah, hold on just a second. Sorry. Okay, so if you go to, all right, this, sorry, my mouse is acting up here. Got to change the batteries. There we go. All right, so here, target. Okay, so, sorry guys, embarrassing. Spokesperson. I'm just trying to like line up what I'm looking at on one screen with the other one. Okay, so, all right, so what they're saying here is, I'll just read it from mine and then I'll find it over here.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. I had to scroll. Okay, ANDSF. This is the the Afghani National Defense and Security Force, ANDSF, capable to fight Taliban, says the Pentagon. Okay, so they go on. They say John Kirby, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Public Affairs, and he got a promotion. I just want to point out after this. Told because now he's the the Secretary for Public Affairs for the Pentagon, told reporters in Washington that the U.S. was concerning over security situation in Afghanistan, stressing the Afghan Defense Force and security forces had the capability to fight Taliban. Okay, and they go on and they're like, okay, this is where, all right. And then they say, according to U.S. officials, Afghan special forces have been able to hold off Taliban in the key centers, including Kandahar, Lashkar Gah, but in locations where the commandos have not been sent in, regular army forces have been overrun. Okay. And by the way, you know what that means? That means they'll never say this, and I can never prove it, but when they're talking about commandos, for the Afghani forces, they're talking about ours. They're not talking about theirs. Okay, and so this is the part that really caught my eye, though. So it says here, okay, but it shows serious concern over the presence of thousands of foreign terrorist fighters in the country. This is Afghanistan 3 days before we gave it up, leaving all those American citizens there. A spokesperson to the Ministry of Defense, Rahula Ahmadzai, said terrorists have been sent to Afghanistan. The numbers of terrorists have been unprecedented. Hundreds of religious madrasas, which are schools, madrasa means school, and seminaries have been recently closed, and thousands of Taliban have been sent to Afghanistan to fight against Afghan security forces and Afghan people in Afghanistan. Pay attention here. Have been sent to Afghanistan. The narrative is always that Taliban is in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
They're all over it and all around it. Okay. It's an international group, mainly in Pakistan, who's a close ally and a member of the Belt and Road Initiative with China. Okay. Taliban have been sent to Afghanistan to fight against Afghan security forces and Afghan people in Afghanistan, Ahmadzai said. adding that Pakistani army officers and personnel have been active recently to fight shoulder to shoulder with Taliban against the Afghan people and security forces. Where the hell is Blinken going to Pakistan and saying, whoa, this is war? If you don't get those guys out, where is that? No, never happened. Okay, instead we just left. Afghan military experts say the country's ongoing fighting has its own depth, as all efforts and sacrifices of the Afghan defense and security forces are sometimes ignored when something minor happens. Keep in mind, at this time, it was being reported, even by some of the left-wing media, that Taliban was going city to city, just like a freaking wrecking ball, just like a juggernaut. Okay, they go on. Okay. Yeah, so he goes on, he says, current security situation in Afghanistan have made a number of Afghans to convince, by the way, a lot of this is translated, to convince the international community through social media to exert pressure on Afghans. So they're kind of begging, like, hey, yo, we got Pakistanis in our country. Exert pressure on Pakistan to stop funding and providing safe havens for Taliban. The campaign Sanction on Pakistan has been launched for the past 3 days, during which Afghans are asking the international community, particularly the United Nations, to sanction on Pakistan as the country is supporting and interfering in the internal affairs of Afghanistan. So you got to ask yourself, right? Who did we really give Afghanistan to? Was it the Taliban? Or was it Pakistan? And think about it.
We had our Marines killed, slaughtered.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a military guy. However, I'm watching that and I listen to people that the soldiers that were there talk about it. And like they said, why would we didn't have a buffer. They had no buffer. They just allowed everybody to push right up to their line. Why? Who? Maybe the better question is, how could an individual or individuals be so power hungry, so demanding wealth and power that you would sacrifice your own countrymen to appease the woke leftists, to appease political correctness, and gain power and wealth and allow this to happen? That's unbelievable.
Well,
right?
this has been the toughest thing, even for me, with my experience as intelligence analyst for many, many years, military intelligence analyst. I've been to all these places tactically, and the thing I've had trouble wrapping my head around in the last 3 years is I kind of thought, like, I knew communism was a threat. I always knew China was a threat. I didn't realize that, as the Epoch Times founder puts it, it's a specter of communism that hangs above us all, and it's coming in everywhere. It never died. And it's, people sometimes say, well, what's worse, communism or fascism? And, fascism is responsible for, attempted genocide and trying to wipe out a race and killing millions and millions of people. But and he's also the founder of Falun Gong, he made a really good point. He said, communism is worse because it not only tries to kill the body, but it tries to kill the soul.
Yeah.
Because there can be no God or anything beyond this earth. And, and you kill the soul, especially against religious people, because if you take away their beliefs in the afterlife, they will give up. I mean, my wife kind of jokes with me sometimes about, I'm Catholic and she's Jewish, and she's like, I said, well, this life is very important, but it's not the most important thing. And they can't, she can't get her head around that, because we believe that there's, a better place, and we're here to, do as much good as we can. but at the same time, we keep moving on. And then there's other religions that believe in reincarnation. That's not us. But what if you take away that religion? You take away those beliefs, people give up. They give up. And that's why it's especially insidious. Anyways, but so the point of that is, how can people do this, right? I believe for a lot of them, it's not very real. I think there's some Western hubris thinking, yeah, they're going to do some bad stuff, but when it gets too bad, we'll just put a stop to them. We'll talk to them, we'll meet them at Starbucks or whatever and talk them out. So, and there are people that still think that way. You won't believe it until you meet them, but there's people that think that way. And it's not because they're misinformed. It's just they're literally communist infiltration of our education system, our life. It starts very young, and it starts with the children, and we're seeing that. Okay, and all anyone needs to do, if you really want to understand this time, just get yourself versed on China between the 50s and the mid 70s, the Cultural Revolution, the Great Leap Forward. It's all the same. It's all the same stuff. Different labels on it, different methods, but they got the Red Guard. That's your Antifa. They went after the small business owners. Owning land made you bad, and it's happening again. Okay, and this is where it comes into, what you're asking is either A, they're fully indoctrinated communists rolling right under the surface and infiltrating our government to the highest levels. They're senile imbeciles like Biden, or they don't see America as that big of a deal because they belong to a globalist elite where they actually think they're going to, get to divide up the world, which won't happen because, the WF thinks that way too, I'm sure. But at the end of the day, who wins? I mean, when it comes down to, there can be only one, right? Who's going to be that one? Who's going to be that globalist who's not a globalist at all? Who wins? It's going to be the person with the biggest gun or the biggest army or an army at all. And the only one in that entire cabal who has the biggest stick is Xi Jinping. So people will argue with me and they're like, oh, it's the WEF and oh, it's Klaus Schwab and all that. You could rant and rave all you want, but if you don't have an army or, you own all the police to make them carry out your orders and you have to pay them really well and detach them from their communities because they're not going to turn against them.
Yeah.
But who can do that is the Chinese Communist Party, because they have the money and they have the freaking manpower. One of their greatest asset is their population. Huge. And also they're brainwashed. They're not brainwashed. They're completely cut off from any sense of autonomy. They already have digital currency in China. Mm-hmm. And there's only approved things you can buy, and it expires. And these idiots are trying to get this over here.
Because they want control, and that's what they want. They want to control America. And they're getting close to doing it, Brian. It's almost happening.
Yeah.
Just think of the media for a second. Think about what happened today. Steven Crowder gets a partial leak of the manifesto from the transgender.
Did he get shut down?
Try to make it, what?
Did they shut him down?
Facebook is censoring it. And it shows that their narrative that the person was a MAGA is not. It was a transgender individual that wanted to kill the effing white kids, the privileged white kids and Christians. Look, man, we're in a war. This is not long. This is a war for the soul of America. I honestly believe that. I believe we are bankrupt, as mortally bankrupt as a nation. We have no true balance. Look, when you can convince or force the population to say things, talk about communism, to state things as fact, that you get shunned, you get shadow banned, you get censored for saying, no, only women can have babies. No, JJ, you're going to say out loud that men can have babies. Well, no, that's impossible. No, you're going to say that I'm going to kick you out of your job. We were there. That's not long ago, Brian. This is the world we live. We live in a world that's sick. It's more
Well,
of
and
a
it,
sick.
I think what I like to stress to people is there's plenty you can do about it. It's not too late. And the reason I say that is because if you're sitting on your couch yelling at the screen, then you get what's coming to you. No one can sit this one out. No one can sit this one out because it's coming for everyone.
No,
And that's why
coming
it
for everyone.
starts. And it starts at the lowest levels, and you have to know what to look for. And where you start, you don't have to like pick up a gun and like go fight. I mean, one thing about unrestricted warfare, which is what is being waged against us by the Chinese Communist Party through many, many proxies, but it's real. And I'll post my many presentations on this with my sources, and Gordon Chang, Brandon Weichart, Bradley Thayer. I mean, the top scholars in this area would agree with me. General Robert Spalding, and it's so obvious when you see it. It's so obvious. Like for instance, you look at Israel, okay, the attacks on Israel, and just last night I posted something, and so did General Spalding, and I said, "Thank you." It's so obvious that the Chinese have something to do with it, and because China is the main big brother, the main supporter of Iran. This is try to keep up here. This is very complicated. So China is the benefactor to Iran in all things, and Iran gives $100 million to Hamas,
Which
Should I
we
say it
gave
again?
$6 billion to Iran.
6 billion, right? Yeah, right before. But the
Right
point I'm
before.
making is like people are like, no, it's not China, they're a competitor, and it's like, are you daft? Are you idiotic? Like
They
seriously.
are. They don't want
They're
to
not.
know.
They're not idiotic. You know what it is? They're lazy. They don't want to have to think about it. They're mentally lazy. The world needs to be nice and smooth. I've been to places on this side of the freedom movement, whatever you want to call it. A good friend of mine, still a good friend, but when the pandemic started, he wouldn't let me talk about China at the, he'd have dinner and drinks up there, and up in Massachusetts, he was part of a organization up there, and I was like, "Are you kidding me? Why not?" People don't want to hear that.
Oh my God! I know.
And then,
It's
but then 2 years later, they're all on tour, yelling freedom, and we got to get China. I don't care about the credit. I care about just using your freaking heads, man. And but the thing is, it's like, and you've got to know what to look for, and you have to go to the town board meetings. You have to speak up. You have to start locally, because guess who starts locally? Guess how? That's the Chinese Communist Party. They start locally, and what I mean by that is the way they infiltrate our society is not from the president down. They start at the counties, man. They start at they check out. You want to find Chinese Communist Party near you? Go check out the chambers of commerce, especially in the sister cities. Look up sister city programs. See if your city's a sister city of a city in China.
yeah.
Look at the chambers of commerce. Keep in mind the spy that shagged or whatever, Swalwell. She was with some local mayor previously.
Yeah.
It's worked her way up. And
Swalwell was small potatoes. You had Dianne Feinstein's driver was a Chinese spy for 20 years, and no one says anything, Brian. I'm so tired. I'll be honest. I'm so tired of living in this make-believe Twilight Zone of a world.
Well, this is the messaging. Okay, here's a Boston Globe. All right. Now you could get whatever one's near you. These are all the same, whether it's the New York Times, the LA Times, or what is it, the Seattle Post Intelligencer. They're all the same. You know who they are. But listen to this messaging. This is the Sunday edition, right? Boston Sunday Globe. Luxury high-rises are, and the main article here. And pay attention to the Saturday ones and the Sunday ones. The main article is Reckoning with Boston's Towers of Wealth. Now, last I checked, we're a capitalist country, and we should be cheering on fair and legal success.
Mm-hmm.
Because in this country, the reason why we get so much good creative evolution of our societies is from competition. There's problems. Don't get me wrong; it's not perfect, but it's the best system out there and ever. But now listen to the subtitle is luxury high rises are sprouting across the skyline. Why is Boston, amid a grave housing crisis, so much better at building homes for the wealthy than for those in need? Now, Massachusetts also dealing with, they don't have enough homes for the illegals.
Yep.
And
And what's it driving up rent?
Yeah. And then think of this. Okay, so think of this as like, imagine this is an intelligence report. Okay, this is your propaganda. This is wealth shaming, but it's also preparing people. Like, that's messed up, man. Yeah, those rich people shouldn't be able to buy those places that they worked hard to afford. And then you go to the metro section and the same thing. And what do you see?
Yeah.
Gun control. Why do we need gun control in this country? Well, if I was invading this country, I wouldn't want, what is there, like, aren't we like the largest standing army just based on our armed population?
Well, to further your point,
Mhm.
last week, what did Kamala Harris say? We
Oh,
need
no,
to have, we need to mimic Australia and their gun buyback. And then as Australia did that, rapes, murders, violent crimes skyrocketed, hundreds and hundreds percent.
No,
It just,
JJ, not only that, that's when the government, now granted, it was never part of their constitution, but they were
right.
legal to own. But after they gave up a lot of their guns, not everyone did, but the majority, a big, I won't say majority because I don't know, but a big amount of Australians gave up their weapons. And then what happened
Yep.
in the middle of COVID? Their own government was mowing them down
Yep.
in
And
the
tell them
public
what to
squares.
do. Yep.
No, do you see that footage? I'll share it with you
Yeah. No,
at another
I've
time.
seen it.
Like the full-on SWAT, like hundreds of SWAT guys just
Yeah.
descending on a protest and just mowing people down. And I saved
Because
all that
there's
shit.
no recourse. The people have no recourse. Look,
And then what happened?
this is something that you and I talk about, right? We talk about being a dad. We talk about raising our children. And this is a perfect example, Brian. You talk about the Chinese and the communists and the leftists and the woke. They're going for the kids. They can't convince you and me that men can have babies, but they sure the hell can convince, second, third, fourth, fifth graders, hey, yeah, this can happen. So I think when you always say, what's your call to action? My call to action to any parent is take care of your family, teach your kids. I saw something today that came on. This name is Nick. I'm not gonna pronounce it right. Freitas, Freitas, former Green Beret, Virginia House delegate. He's a delegate now in Virginia, and he was in a discussion, and he was talking about, and it hit me square in the eyes. I actually paused it, brought my son in, and said, "I need you to listen to this." Because we go back, my son and I go back and forth on, look what I saw online, look at this, and it's our way of communicating and getting ideas across to each other. And what he said, Brian, was so profound. He said, "We're raising children to not critically think." I'm not going to quote him correctly, but this is what his gist was. We're raising our children to be subservient to authority, to not ask questions and critically think, and rewarding them for falling in line instead of telling their children, you need to question everything. Because what we're doing is, let's say I take my son and I'm like, oh, you're going to do it this way because I said it this way, and you're going to do it this way because mom said it this way. And then he falls in line. So what happens when he goes to university or gets his first job or starts getting into discussions with people that are higher level than him in whatever standing, social, professional, whatever? They're going to fall in line with, okay, they're above me, I have to say yes, yes sir, no sir. I don't want that. I had my son watch this video. I said, look, this is just what dad says. It's very important for me to have my son hear it from another voice, because a lot of times you just hear your dad go wonk, 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 right? I want my son to understand, don't you, especially in this world we live in, don't believe anything. In fact, I want you to fact check your dad. And when I tell you to do something, I try it and I fail a lot, just because
Mhm.
being a dad's tough. But when I tell my son, I need you to do this, not because I said it, son, let me explain to you why this is so important to me that you do X, Y, and Z. Why is it so important for you never to discuss anything about your life when you're online? I don't want you talking to anybody, or anybody that is not a friend that you know of, not your friend. And to be able to have those conversations. And I tell him, do not in this world today trust anything that you see, hear, or people of authority tell you. And damn it, Brian, it's hard to have these discussions that you can't trust anybody. It goes against human nature. Human nature is to believe that another man or woman is going to be honest and forthright, and you're going to build relationships. The priest, your teacher, law enforcement. Let's look at those three. Catholic priest, and I'm not knocking on Catholic priests. I'm Catholic, but it could be pastors. It could be a religious faith. You're molesting our children. You're talking about climate change, and that transgender is we need to honor that. If the Bible doesn't say anything about any of this stuff, sin and moral, everything moral is relative. You can make your own mind up. This is what is being taught in our synagogues, our churches, etc. Teachers are grooming children sexually to tell them they're okay to do transgender. Well, what if those teachers started to tell these kids that you can be baptized and believe in Jesus Christ? They'd be thrown in jail. I have to tell my son to honor and respect the police at all times, but you are never to trust them. You are
Mhm.
never to let them in our house. I mean, dear God, Brian, look at how screwed up our nation is. Think of that. I just named three of the top institutions that every American goes through, has contact with: law enforcement, schools, and religious faith. And I trust none of them. None of them.
Mhm.
This is a sad world. But I
Well,
think what
it's
Nick
not
was
new
saying
though.
was, I know it's not new, but the
Can,
world is so fallen and so morally bankrupt that it's hard to say to your son, hey, man, you can trust what's in this house, but outside of it, you don't take anything at face value. And it's
Mhm.
something that's hard for me as a grown adult I have to tell myself, wait, whoa, wait a minute. I don't trust that person. And I hate it. I hate it that I think that way. I hate that when I look out and I go, look at those scumbags. Look at those degenerates. And when I see it, where other people are like, oh, this is great. I'm like, that's a degenerate. That's a degenerate. That's a savage that needs to be put down like a rabid dog. But damn it, my son is my world. And I'm not going to
Mhm.
let savages get a piece of him.
No, and you
Even though
shouldn't.
it's
And
okay.
well, and that's look, the thing is, it's like, and I'll post this. This is just a random study, but that's why, like, I always tell people, I always tell them, like, don't worry about looking at anything except for the history of the Chinese Communist Party, because here's how it works. For the Chinese to achieve their ultimate goal, they need complete subservience of the
Mhm.
entire population. They need America gone. Okay, we need to be gone. And so, but even during the Cultural Revolution, the reason why you had communes, so they got rid of, like, you couldn't eat in your house. You had to go to these collectives or these communes. Well, that was because they could monitor, and it breaks up the household, and it breaks up the nuclear family. Because, well, I mean, I think they state it here really well. What they wanted is, Yeah, so and it reveals that King's law upholding of parents' authority was not only about maintaining household heads' control over the family, as many scholars believe, but to enforce a relationship power parents enjoyed over their offspring, which was then analogized of officials and the emperor's authority over the commoners. So what happens is you got competing things here, but what what the Chinese Communist Party does is they in this case here they're saying, well, it's swung back, but what they go on to say is because you look towards Mao or Xi as the father, you
Yeah.
look to the state as the father. So they break up the nuclear family, and because if we have a community, okay, that's hard to manage. If we have a state with sovereignty, that's hard to manage. If you have a collection of, if you have two political parties, those are autonomous groups. You don't have total authority. So you break up the family, then you break up the community. Okay. And then what else is, let me see, what else is a totalitarian like dictatorship dealing with? Well, now they have competition from a higher being, from religion. Got to break that up too. So if you look at what, Pope Francis is trying to move forward for the Catholic Church, he's trying to break down the hierarchical structure of the traditional Catholic Church into things that really resemble communes from the Chinese times of Mao. Okay. So they're breaking down all the competition. So when you go into the the kids with the transgender and all that, you notice in a lot of those cases, the parents didn't know.
Yep.
Because they're
They didn't
undermining
know. Yes.
undermining the authority of the parents. So what you're doing is right, and it's just about spending time with them and constantly telling them and empowering them and saying, "Hey, look, you speak up because I got your back." And it's about time too. You gotta spend the time. As you know, you spend a lot of time with your kids, and but it's that's the key thing, because as long we are the greatest influencers in our kids' lives. Stephen Sondheim in Into the Woods. Yes, I was a theater nerd back in high school, but they say in this one song in Into the Woods, they say children will not obey, but children will listen, and they'll look to you for which way to go and which way to turn.
Yeah.
And so you have to maintain that relationship, otherwise someone's going to step in and do it for you. And that's what and that's why, like, if you want to look, if you want to people out there who don't know, okay, they want to do something, they don't know what to do, get more involved with your kids' school. I mean, one of the blessings of the pandemic was a lot of parents got to see just exactly what was being taught to their kids.
Insane. Yeah. How about, it's just, I just strongly believe, like, when you look at these kids that are screwed up and you look at the things that are, I believe, all of the ills in America, you could trace it back to the lack of father. There's a lack of that strong person standing in the family that's going to work every day. What if we had all the fathers were in the household, right? I'm not talking about men that are divorced and that love their kids and are involved. I'm talking about the people that just walk away from their kids and their families, right? That's what I'm talking about. We're having children out of wedlock and just not even caring. Because if your father's in the household and your child's going through something, like could be transgender or I want to shoot people up, the father's there as the rock to say, hey man, no, we're going to pause this. Let's sit down and talk about it. It would change a lot of things. Look, I bet you can go into Chicago in the inner city with all the gangs and all the weekly murders and destruction they have and the thousands of people being murdered a year, worse than Afghanistan and Iraq. And I bet you can go in there and find out that 90% of them don't have a dad. That's the truth. And this is what's killing America. You've removed, and you said it right. You've removed the family. Now the father is the state. And what I don't understand, Brian, maybe it's just because I had a great dad and my dad had a great dad and on, and I worked in government. how in the hell would anybody want anybody from the effing government to have any say over your life? These people are incompetent. You want AOC to tell you what you should do? You want McCarthy to tell you?
And,
You want Mitch McConnell, that old decrepit piece of skin,
and look,
telling you how to live your life?
if you want that, you're, a very undereducated person about our system of government, because you should know that they work for us. So if you're waiting for them to tell you what to do, you're a moron. And you need to go back to school, pull up, get your number 2 pencil and, pull up your little desk and open up American History 101. I've got plenty of copies, by the way, because I buy American history textbooks every time I go to an antique bookshop so they don't disappear. But yeah, people need to understand that. And, it is easier sometimes. It's easier sometimes to take that nap when you're with your kids. A non-nuclear family, my kids are divorced, but we're very, very close and we see each other all the time and I get along with the parents. So, but sometimes it's hard, it's like, you're like, God, I'm really tired. I need to get that nap. But you know what? You only get one shot at this. And if you don't take advantage of it, if you don't take advantage of teaching your kids everything someone's going to teach them. And if you study the Khmer Rouge, in Cambodia, the killing fields.
Yeah.
There's a great movie on Netflix. You should watch it. It's called First They Killed My Father, and it's about the Khmer Rouge. And that was the communist, as for the audience that might not know, the communist revolutionaries in Cambodia. And these kids were like made to kill their own parents in a lot of cases, and they do it. And you see echoes of this now when you see kids attacking elders, attacking their parents, turning their parents in. Keep in mind all of these things that we saw during the pandemic, people turning in their own parents for not wearing masks and everything. That's just prepping people. That's just normalizing a snitch
slippery
society.
Slope.
Yeah, and people really have to think about that. All those things, all those like citations and everything, that's all right out of the communist playbook. It's all right out of the communist playbook, including the masks.
You have to talk. You have to have a relationship with your kids, and you have to talk openly, and you have to be vulnerable enough to be wrong. And that's something that this former Green Beret said that was really, it hit me hard. He said, "You're going to make mistakes, but you need to reward your child for pointing out those mistakes and saying, 'No, Dad, you're wrong. This is my citation that I found that you're wrong.'" And you look at it and go, "Holy cow, I am wrong. And thank you." But what you did is you instilled in him and reinforced that you don't trust anybody. And you have the intelligence to go out and fact check it and see if it's correct. And what it does also, Brian, is when they're hearing you go wonk, 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 and Dad's tired. I'm tired of hearing my dad. And then he sees it and goes, "Holy crap, my dad was right. Well, what else is my dad right about?" I just think that the foundation of your family and relationship, and I'm not saying it has to be the perfect nuclear, that's the best case scenario, but even those are not the best, is just have a relationship and be able to instill and talk about faith and morals and civility, like we talked with Aura,
or just
time.
Talk. Or just talk and listen. And
Yes.
JJ, I want to break in on this because I'm going to talk about you for a second. On that note, you're right. It's not always the traditional family. So I'll probably paraphrase this and get this wrong. So the way I met JJ is pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. I'm going to tell this story. You knew I would. Let me just take the screen. Okay, so it's pretty interesting. I was out in a town in Oregon where my mother-in-law lives, and we go out there quite often to see her. And my wife insists on staying at this boutique hotel. And it just, for the record, boutique usually means, not a good hotel, but she likes it. It's a decent hotel. It's comfortable. It's grown on me. But there's a kind of a little diner attached. It's one of those places. And so one day I went in, I was really hungry. They do have these massive meat lovers omelets that I love. They're like that thick. And so there's this guy sitting over there at the counter, and I could tell this dude wanted to like talk to someone. And so I was like, "Oh, what kind of truck you?" He's like, "Oh, this kind of truck." And we start talking, and I talked about my work, and then he's, "Oh yeah, you'd like my buddy JJ Carroll." And I'm like, "Yeah, that name sounds familiar. I'd heard of you." I just couldn't place it, and he, here we are across the country, and this guy's telling me about JJ. So I called JJ maybe a week later because I gave the guy my email, and I think I connected with you on Twitter. And me and JJ talked for like 2 hours. But as I understand it, and JJ, you correct, you kind of know the details better. But what this guy told me basically was that when he was a kid, for different reasons, his parents, I think his parents weren't quite as around. And I don't think
His mother
I don't know.
died. Yeah,
Mother
his mother
died.
died when he was like 10 or 11 years old. Yeah.
And the Carrolls, so this kid, was he across the street, I guess?
Yeah, right across the street. Just moved in. We lived in a nice neighborhood in South Louisiana. He lived across
You
the
finished.
street.
You tell the story. It's your story.
Oh,
So you
it's
tell it.
just he's
This to me, by the way, is moving, and this is why this man is awesome. He's my brother now, and it's like he puts his money where his mouth is, and he was raised this way, and this is so.
yeah.
Go ahead.
I had a great mom, and I have 5 siblings, so it was 6 of us, right? And across the street, Grant's mother died, and of course, it was traumatic. And I think Grant was, 11 years old. I think around then, maybe even younger, and he was lost, right? His father was going through things, and he didn't have a mom, and his father would go to school, and he'd wait for the school bus, and then my mom just said, "Hey, Grant, you come over whenever you want." And he took that to heart, meaning that kid was over at our house 24/7. I woke up, Grant was there. I was going to bed, Grant was there. And he came every single day for breakfast and then jumped on the bus and went to school every single day. And my mom was big on have to have breakfast. So she would get up and make eggs and bacon or pancakes and sausage every morning. And you had to drink milk, right? We all hated milk, and you had to drink milk. And there was Grant. I'd come down from school. There was Grant. It was just part of our family. And
It's an awesome story. It's really moving.
and that's, I think, but he absorbed a lot, I think, from our family, just our discussions. And I think that's life, right? You find, I just think like,
and he seems like he's doing
talking-
incredibly well now too.
He is incredibly entrepreneurial young man, married. His wife is wonderful, traveling nurse, and just a great conservative American, just patriotic, loves America.
Yeah, and he's a really nice guy. I talked to him for like 2 hours, and I just
he can talk. He's never met a stranger in his life. This guy. So, but
that's funny.
But isn't that what the world's supposed to be like, right? Is to have care and compassion and civility and kindness. And I know that it's not gone in our country, but I know that it is slipping away, and it is rare. It's just rare. I watch my son tell people, yes,
rare.
man.
I don't think it's that rare. I think we're made to believe I think it's under attack, but I would say that I was in the propaganda field, and there is a tactic to make you think you've already lost, because then people give up. And from what I've seen, like when I do get off the computer and I go out in my different communities, we live in 3 different places, and the 2 bluest states out there, like 2 of the top 5. I mean, Massachusetts and New York, and like they're so blue. They're this is terrible, but I will say in the real communities, especially the working class communities, it's very, very much alive and well. And here's an example, and you see a lot of it in a lot of the, like in Massachusetts, I see it in my son's Greek family. So he's half Greek. They're Spartans. And he's proud of saying that he has all the Sparta, everything's Sparta with this kid, man. And but
That's great.
what I was really impressed with was I'm rushing to get out to his final game this Sunday. I really didn't have time to drive the hour, but of course I'm not going to miss it.
Yeah.
And my ex-wife didn't tell me she wouldn't be there, which that's another story. But we get along fine. Sometimes it slips her mind, but she was out of town, so I'm like, when I get there, I can't find her car because I usually like to park near them so we can all walk back together.
Yeah.
I can see him off, and I can't find it, so I just park. I'm going to get there. The first quarter is almost done. And I'm walking, and then I see this guy with his hat on backwards and a kid that looks just like him. And I look at hey, Tony? And it's my ex-brother-in-law. And what had happened was my ex-wife had called her brother-in-law and said, hey, I can't make it, but someone needs to be there for Alex. I'm going to get him to the game. But and yeah, the whole family's there watching him. This whole big Greek family. And
it's great.
It is just nice to see them there. And of course, we get along great and everything like that. And it's just a nice thing. I mean, and that's all it takes. Like, you don't even need to have kids to be a good parent to, another person. It doesn't even have to be a child. It could just be, that old dude that you see sitting on the bench alone all the time. Sit down and talk to him. Yeah. And that sort of thing. And that's what I encourage people to do, because if everyone does that like once a day, and this isn't like pie in the sky, hippy dippy stuff. This is real, because
just be kind.
And to apply it in reverse, the way, when I was doing competitive intelligence, the really aggressive ones, that's like industrial espionage. The way they get into companies is they look for those isolated employees. They look for those employees that seem like they're undervalued, they're not getting praised enough, and they recruit them. And then that person, once you give that person an audience, they will sell out their own company just to, bathe in the sunlight of praise. And kids are the same way. Everyone's the same way. So that's a practical example of what happens if you don't do that. So that's a great way where everyone can start fighting and debate, that sort of thing, like debate, but you don't have to agree. I think traditionally, I think we should have Democrats and Republicans, because I don't want a one-party state, but we need to get back to, but it needs to be anchored firmly to the Constitution and to the values that this country was established under.
Yep, because we're under assault when it comes to that. And I just the last thing before we start wrapping up is I will be honest. I do. There's a big part of me that believes that there's great civility and kindness and compassion in the country, but I do battle. I have a constant struggle with this question: is America still good? Is the people, the majority of people, good? Is it built in them? And maybe it's just from my time in law enforcement, but I question it quite a bit. I'm pleasantly surprised many times when I meet people and it's great. I mean, I'm not going around going, everybody sucks. And I'm just saying that what I've dealt with and seen and the lack of civility, I do have an ongoing conversation with myself is where do I fall? Because I hate, like you and I have talked about this, I hate the fence straddlers, but on this topic of civility, kindness, compassion, and goodness, I'm really, I don't want to say, no, it's all bad. And I don't want to say, oh, it's all good. I'm just in the middle. And I'd be honest, I hate being in the middle. I like having something more definitive. And I am struggling with this, Brian. It is something that I do think about quite a bit. Yeah.
And it's, but, just, keep in mind too, like, you only lose when you stop fighting. The world could be crashing.
Oh no, I'm not going to stop fighting. I don't think ever.
Well, I would recommend, I was inspired by Aura to go out and buy something mindful. So I always mispronounce. I've read his other books, but Thich Nhat Hanh. Very, all the scholars, I'm sure, are rolling their eyes because I probably totally butchered that. But let me close out with this to our point. And he is one of the best known Zen teachers in the world, mindfulness. He's the man. I mean, he's like, the top guy. He's been doing this for 70 years. And I recommend everyone get anything by him and just read. It's just a bunch of little things you could read every morning. This one's called How to Fight. And he says, use your community. This is one I just opened up a chapter and found this. Part of acknowledging suffering is acknowledging we need help. Okay, and that's important. And I wish the far left and the academics could realize this. Like, you don't know everything. You screwed up. Reach out, go across the aisle, talk to people. You need help. It is much easier to practice compassion if you have the energy and support of a community. Now, he's not saying a collective. He's saying your community, your family, whatever. A community helps us to not lose hope. It's not always easy to resolve our suffering alone. We're all unskilled at times. Even if we don't want to harm anyone or create suffering, we do it anyways. We can't be skillful all the time. Every one of us needs help. Find a way to be with others who know how to look and listen deeply, who can help us understand the situation more clearly. This will nourish your compassion. With compassion in our heart, we suffer less, because compassion has the power to heal. Take refuge in a community, and then you will be able to help others as you help yourself. Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing.
Yeah, and that's
just be kind. If everybody would just treat everybody just like
be kind
Jesus
and strong. Be kind and strong. Can't be, some people. Let's be real here. Not, some people are just not redeemable. I mean, and I know,
and the idea that because you are compassionate and kind, that does not equate to weakness. I think it takes a very strong person to be compassionate and kind, and to hold a door for somebody that does not respect that, and instead of lashing out and wanting to punch them in the face and just eat it. I think it takes courage and strength to do that. So I appreciate you talking about this, and because I find
JJ, I got to tell one more thing real quick here, because you just made me think of it, just to make my point, and then I'm going to actually let you close out if you don't mind. All the websites and everything. So Naomi's uncle is Dan Goleman, and he was one of the guys. He created emotional intelligence. He's that guy, and he's friends with the Dalai Lama, and he's written a book with him. And so I guess technically he's my uncle-in-law. He's a great guy. But he was giving a speech when I first met him, and he was telling me about a conversation the Dalai Lama told him about the current Dalai Lama. And he said, the Dalai Lama came upon, or the Buddha came upon, like, this guy in the woods, and he's all beat up and bruised up and broken and twisted and gnarled, close to death. And the Dalai Lama looks down and goes, "Oh my God, what happened to you?" And he says, "Well, there was an elephant charging at me, so I turned the other cheek." And so the Dalai Lama says, "Why'd you do that?" He goes, "Well, that's what you told us to." He goes, "Yeah, but I told you to get out of the way first." So you see my point.
Yeah.
All right, JJ, take it away, man.
I think why you and I talk about this, talk about being a father and being having civility and kindness, because I think that we ultimately know when the action is taken, and it's going to be soon. I think in order to restore order and civility and law and order in our country, we're going to need men that are going to be so strong in their beliefs that they will show compassion and kindness to people that deserve none. And I think that's why it's so important. And besides how much you and I both love being fathers, and I think that's gonna. I think civility and kindness and compassion is going to be a very rare commodity. If we continue to go down this road of where we're going, because we're seeing the country split, we're seeing sides being taken, and you're going to have to choose a side, and there are going to be some things that are going to be unspeakable. And I truly believe, Brian, that commodity of strength, of kindness and compassion and being civil, I think it's going to be a very, very rare commodity. And that's why I think you and I talk about it at the state, at the level we do. But we'll be back on Thursday.
Do we have any
God
guests?
God only knows what's going to happen by Thursday. Who knows, Brian? Things happen so fast, and it is so crazy that I look back a week ago and go, God almighty, how did this get so crazy? It's even crazier. So, but you and I will be on top of it. So, and thank you everybody that joined us tonight. And
thank you everyone, and make sure you check out JJ's JJ Carroll, CARRELL.com. Pick up his book, read it. Trust me, you won't be sorry. If you have a friend who can't afford it, then when you get done reading it, pass it along. You'll learn a lot. And then I'll also say, make sure you go to dailyclout.io. I'll post the link here, and we will have this up hopefully tomorrow. And when we do repost them, I'll make sure I put all the links in there. We have our past episodes. If you missed it last week, we had a great episode with Ora Nadrich. And I mispronounced that last week, but all about mindfulness and toughness as well. She has a lot of toughness that was pretty surprising. But things continue to get better. I love this community, by the way. Sin-O, Ernie, sorry, all you guys are here all the time. We didn't get to Me Fair Laugh. I don't know what that is, but it's funny. I'll read it. Me Fair Laugh. I'm not ignoring you, but we got to go. But anyways, please reach out. Go to dailyclout.io for comments on the show. You can comment on the YouTube or on the Rumble, or you can just send a note to Brian at dailyclout.io. Both JJ and I read those. And if any feedback, anything like that. And you'll find JJ Carroll on Twitter at JJCarroll14. And that's again,
job, Brian.
Thanks. And then I am at Brian O'Shea SPI. And that is Brian with an I. And then Brian O'Shea on Getter. And you're on Getter too as just JJ Carroll. Yeah. And I think that's it. Let me post the link. Make sure when you go Daily Clout too, sign up for the free newsletter. There's a lot of stuff going on there. They're ripping through the 5-year documents. They've done some great work. And sign up for their alerts, and make sure you subscribe to Daily Clout's YouTube while you're here. So thank you, everyone. And JJ, thanks again.
All right. We'll see you soon. Bye.
All right. Have a good one, everyone. Bye-bye.